Welcome to another live Q&A session from the Business Circle, brought to you by AT&T. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Alexandra Wilkis Wilson is our featured guest. We're happy to have her. She's the co-founder of Gilt Group, home to gilt.com. She's also currently the CEO and president of an online beauty service app, Glam Squad. We're here in Manhattan at the Glam Squad offices. We'll talk a little bit about that venture later on in our conversation here today. My name is James Hilliard, glad to be here on board, and I have an invitation for all of you that have joined us. And I've already seen questions come in. Karen and Tom and Sarah have been submitting questions to us early. You can do so as well. We have some ideas that we want to share tied around relationships and business execution. But if you want to take the conversation somewhere, or you hear something that we're talking about and you want more information, submit a question. We've got team members working with us to get those questions in so that we can share and get through a lot of things in this hour. And Alexandra, when I told people that I was coming here and we're going to have this conversation, I said I'm heading to New York, going to be interviewing one of the co-founders of Gilt.com. And I said it with kind of a question like, do you know what? And I never got anyone that said, oh, I sort of know that. Everyone said, I love Gilt. You've created a relationship with those customers that any e-commerce or regular commerce site would love and would really be thrilled to have, yet they don't have that. They didn't build those relationships. How important has that relationship been to the success, and what did it mean to you personally as a founder to realize that you made such a connection with so many people?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. And when I think back to our early days of Gilt, we started back in 2007. November 13th, 2007 was our very first sale. And we were a team of 5 co-founders. And I remember discovering very early on in our history, we would run these events online. They were typically 36 hours long, and they were high-end designers, a lot of them European designers, American designers, and our merchandise would be 60, sometimes 70% off retail. And it was so exciting, and it was a competitive process, and our customers would come to us. I would meet them. Some of them were my friends. Some of them would just walk up to me at events, at weddings, at birthday parties, whatever it was, and they would come to me with this sense of accomplishment of like, this is Gilt, I won this dress. And it wasn't about what the brand was, what the designer was, how much they paid for it. It was this feeling of victory. And I think that part of that was intentional, and part of that was somewhat magical. And I think it contributed to this cult-like, obsessive, appointment-based shopping that Gilt became.
And for those, if folks have not done their background on Gilt, Alexandra also wrote with one of her co-founders, Alexis Maybank, a book by invitation only. And I've had a chance to read it. And it gives a great chronicle of the founding of the company, the ups and downs that you went through. So I recommend folks check that out. We'll touch on some ideas, and relationships really is a big theme that runs throughout the book. You and Alexis met at Harvard, and then you reunited Harvard Business Schools. You're doing graduate work. You're best friends, and working with a friend, a family member, that can be a challenge for a lot of folks that are watching us today and might be hesitant to stepping into business with someone. Did you ever have that hesitation with Alexis saying, I'm not sure, our friendship's too valuable, I don't want to risk business over that?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people will tell you in general, don't go into business with a friend, don't go into business with a family member. That's sort of like a popular saying out there. And I think for every person and every relationship, that's going to be different. So if you're thinking about your own business and you're considering going to business with a family member, you probably wouldn't want to go into business with every family member, but maybe there are certain family members who could provide a good balance. Same goes for our friendships. So Alexis and I made a really good team for a number of reasons. We're also today, 7 years after starting the business, we're still very good friends. We're actually having dinner tonight together. And our friendship really got stronger during business school. So we both had this common interest in business, and we had different experiences prior to business school. So she had been kind of raised in Silicon Valley. She was a very early team member at eBay, so she had excellent early stage hyper growth experience. I had a finance background, and then after business school spent a lot of time in luxury goods industry. So our experiences were complementary to one another, and something people don't talk about a lot when thinking about partnerships is personalities too. So even though we were and continue to be best of friends, our personalities are very, very different, and I think that's sort of part of why our relationship has been successful. You know, I think of Alexis as a big picture thinker. She doesn't sweat the small stuff. She's not obsessed with the little details, but she can really, I always call her visionary. Okay. Whereas I like to be very tactical. I'm very organized. I like to, you know, go through to-do lists, check the boxes, make sure every little step, you know, gets done. Yeah. And, you know, she'll pull me out of the weeds sometimes, and then I'll sometimes bring her down into reality of like, yes, that might be a great idea, but, you know, this is the reality. This is our team today. We can't execute on every single idea. So
you're talking about a balance, and it's something that we've talked on previous interviews with other folks here on these live Q&A sessions, whether it be a left-brained individual and a right brain, more analytical or more creative, or the balance that you're talking about, more detail-oriented, a bigger vision. You also get out and help mentor others that are coming up in business now. Is that something you talk a lot about, and maybe we can talk a little bit of evaluating? How would you know someone's going to be a good partner, not whether they're a friend or whether it's you're just evaluating someone that you met at business school, or maybe it's some mashup, right? You met up somewhere, some conference, and someone that you really, how can you evaluate, are we going to be complementary to each other?
Yeah, I could talk about this for a long time because it's really important and it's something I'm really passionate about. So one tool that's really helpful, and I recommend to small business owners and even big companies to think about implementing, is the Myers-Briggs tool to get a sense for, you know, what is your profile, what are your tendencies in terms of your personality traits, and it's very normal to hire people that are similar to you. And that's a human tendency. It's, you know, you understand each other better, you understand what makes each other tick, you might have more fun together, working together, but it's really important that you bring in people with a diverse way of looking at business, of processing information. You can't have a business of all optimistic ideas people. You need those people on the team.
Wait a second.
This might not be. Exactly. What are the KPIs? How are we going to evaluate the opportunity, et cetera? So you really want to make sure you have that balance. There's no such thing as over communication. So, you know, I think back to your question of thinking about a friend that you're going to work with, or a family member, or you know, their husband and wife teams are really popular in certain industries. There's no such thing as over communicating. You should talk about what the relationship's going to look like, what's going to happen, how are we going to handle disagreement, do we want to fight in public, do we want to kind of take it outside, are we going to treat each other as though we treat every other person on the team?
Let's talk about that for a moment. Mario Armstrong was one of our guests in our last Q&A. He works with his wife. She's the CEO of the company. He's the public face, doing a lot of the work in front of the camera and in other places. They had a rule. We do not talk business in the bedroom. They can't even write things down. He admitted he cheated once or twice of writing and scribbling a note, but if he had a business thought, he would have to get out of the bedroom, go and type it out in the dining room or somewhere else, and then they would discuss it somewhere. Did you and Alexis set up any rules of negotiation that we will talk about friends and family while we're at work, or we won't? When we're out at dinner, we will talk about business, or we won't? What did you all do?
So we didn't make such a clear, hard and fast rule, but I love that. I think that's a really, really good rule, especially for a marriage to succeed and last. For us, it was for Alexis and me. We wanted to make sure that we were communicating. So if there were ever moments that we disagreed with one another, we would just feel very comfortable bringing it up. So Alexis was my boss. She was the CEO. So I was technically reporting to her, which a lot of people would ask me, like, isn't that weird to report to a friend? I said, you know what? It's actually awesome, because this is a person who knows me intimately. She knows my strengths and weaknesses, and we want to set this company up for success. So she's not going to put me into roles that she knows I can't handle. She's going to put me where she knows I can do my very best. And because we were so comfortable with one another, we didn't have to go through so many formalities in terms of getting to know one another, and even just kind of reporting. It could be really quick emails and phone calls and text messages of like, here's what I'm doing, I'm so excited. And
you knew her motivation most likely. And so, especially in the era this was being built, when Gilt was being built, 2007 and beyond, hyper growth, just fast, and that helped. I know that the company had planned, you with some of your other partners had planned to launch in January, and you all said no, we need to be out before the holidays, right, to cash in on the idea of the holiday time frame and spend. That had to be because you had the relationship. Did that allow you to move quickly, and is that something that folks can think about, that if they notice in their business that, hey, we need to move on a certain time scale, and it's a pretty aggressive time scale, that having that intimacy, whether it's a friendship, other type of relationship, that really helps add speed to growth?
I think one thing I believe really strongly in is getting to know your team. So I know we're going to chat about Glam Squad and what I'm doing here, but one of the first things I did when I got to Glam Squad, I said, let's do an offsite. Let's take a day and go somewhere. We use Myers-Briggs as a tool, and we really had an opportunity to have some hard conversations with one another, get to know each other better. We each spoke very openly about, here's what I'm good at, here's what I'm less good at, here's what I love doing, this is what I'm passionate about. In order to have influence with me, this is what you need to know about me. So you could kind of share your laundry list of pet peeves, things you love. One person on our team sort of made a comment of like, I hate going to trade shows, for example. Like, he hates that kind of fake small talk. And I laughed and I said, I love going to trade shows. Like that, there's something about being out there and talking to people and kind of spreading the vision and the mission and passion about a business is something I actually love doing. I don't care if it's to strangers. And so understanding what makes people tick as early on as possible is going to set your business up for high performance. And so if there are any kind of issues or areas, moments of mistrust, which could be just because someone's new to the company or doesn't have a history, you want to fast forward that, fast track that as quickly as possible, so that then you can feel really united as a team and then grow.
5 co-founders of Gilt Group. When you started expanding, there are now over 900 employees or so, the last I read. Did that extend the idea in that culture of getting to know each kind of individual employees or empowering groups within the company to get to know each other? Was that extended outside of just the founders circle? And is that something that even with Glam Squad here, that you've made the effort to really try and get that team to know each other? Has that been a focus?
There are a lot of things that early stage companies can do, and back in 2007 at Gilt we were doing them, and that was frankly a little new for me, and today it's become the norm. Mm-hmm. So open seating plans are very popular for startups, and that's great because you can see everyone, you can hear one another. It can get a little noisy, but you can also feel that sense of excitement, energy, and we're in this together, and get rid of layers of bureaucracy. It doesn't matter what title someone might have, we're all in the trenches together. So I really recommend open seating plan. Sometimes you can even have a situation where you rotate seats, so every so often you can change seats and then get to know the people to your right, to your left, in front of you. And I think creating a culture and an environment where anyone can have an idea. It doesn't matter if it's an intern who hasn't even graduated college but just has a good idea. Mm-hmm. If you create an environment where all ideas are welcome, and if it's a good idea, it's going to be pursued. That's really exciting for a lot of people, especially for kind of millennials and the next generation, which all of these tech startups need to have, because that's our future. So, comparing, I came out of a more corporate culture world. I worked in investment banking right out of college, and those environments are not about the most junior people having ideas and those ideas getting fast-tracked, but there are a lot of other great lessons to be learned in a more structured environment. But so I love that about the startup world really embracing ideas and having this kind of can-do attitude. You can have an idea on a Monday, and let's test it on Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of the questions I saw coming through our queue had to do with the idea of balancing out ideas, and how do you evaluate what's a good idea, what's an idea that might need to be fleshed out more that we can deal with later on, what's something we can aggressively think about Monday and test on Thursday. Do you have an evaluation criteria that you put ideas through very quickly as a quick sort?
It's a really good question, and to answer it appropriately, I think it depends on what type of business you have, and it depends what stage you are in that business. Also depends on how much funding you have, how much cash in the bank. And so, when I think of opportunities, let's say for us now in the world of Glam Squad, there are different priorities that I'm thinking through as a leader for the organization. One is, could this idea lead to greater awareness of our brand and have a positive effect on our branding? Another could be, is this a future potential revenue stream? Another could be just finding ways of attracting amazing people and talent, because at the end of the day we're largely a logistics business of services, and people are absolutely critical to what we're doing. And so that kind of framework of thinking, this is a good idea and it's good for our brand, this is something we should think about because it's it's going to build our business from a revenue perspective. That's a good framework to think about at the stage that we're in, which is pretty early. We only launched Glam Squad 9 months ago. You can't do every idea. You can't execute on anything. So you really do have to prioritize. And sometimes it's helpful to say, to put a list together, and you could do this exercise quarterly. Some people might do it monthly, and sort of say, like, these are all the ideas that we're thinking about. You can do this with your executive team. These are all the ideas we're considering, and these are the ideas we're not going to talk about again for 3 months or for 6 months.
But you don't throw them away.
Absolutely
they get
not.
stored, and we may come back to them because the market could change. We as consumers might be ready for something that we weren't ready for several months ago. That's the idea.
I think that's right, because if you're going to try to do everything, it's really hard to do everything perfectly.
Yeah.
So whether it's expansion of your business into other geographies or other verticals, you can't do everything at the same time. And the last thing you want to do is have your customers lose faith in you because you're not executing at the level that you want.
Yeah. There was a concept on that idea, I think, of sorting ideas and even executing against certain ideas that come up that I read in the book. And again, the book is by invitation only. It's a really great read. It's a fun read too. It was well written. Urgency versus what's important. And I've talked with other folks as well, and maybe some folks in our audience have experiences where something comes up in a early stage startup, and it just feels like this is now the most important thing that we have to drop everything and focus on this. And unfortunately, that urgent thing takes over and might really steer a company in the wrong direction. Talk about the difference between urgent and important, and how you're able to sort that out, and how others might be able to.
Yeah, I think it's really important to think about these two distinctions. So urgency sometimes could be putting out fires. So if you have some sort of tech business, if there's a bug in the system, like, that is urgent. You need to attend to that, because otherwise, maybe,
if the site's down, that's urgent. Let's get it back up.
That is very, very urgent. And often, I think, in the world of engineers, a lot of the issues that they tend to are urgent. As a leader of a company, I think the leader should be focusing on what's important, and the leader can help guide the team to thinking about and executing ultimately towards the things that are important, the things that are going to move the needle for that company. Perhaps if it's consumer facing, what's going to build the brand, what's going to engender customer loyalty. In the world of retail, holiday is a really important time of year, because for many companies, a big chunk of revenues kind of happen in that window between Thanksgiving and New Year's. So making sure that someone has their eye on the prize at all times is really important. That's typically the CEO, and then the team has to balance between making sure they're following that path, but also attending to what's urgent.
And you have to then, I'm assuming as a leader, and I won't put words in your mouth, but expand upon the idea of trusting then your team. I'm going to trust you to take care of that urgent tech matter. I'm not going to get involved with that as the leader. And really being, allowing people to have part ownership in the direction of a business. It sounds like that's a theme and a belief you have. Am I right? Am I reading that correctly?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think trust, so today at Glam Squad, trust is something we talk about all the time. It's a word that comes up all the time. So we need to trust our fellow employees. We need to trust our stylists in order for clients to book our services. What Glam Squad does, I don't know if I
let's
made
do it.
that clear.
Let's make it, because it's great, and it seems like a very simple
It's pretty
model.
simple.
Yeah.
I mean, what the process of getting ready for women is sometimes not that much fun, and it can be a little bit stressful. So our idea at Glam Squad is to make that process of getting ready a whole lot easier. And I like to think of it almost as we're packaging self-confidence in a little bottle and delivering it to our customers. So we're a beauty services app. We're live in New York. We're about to launch LA, and we'll definitely go to other markets. And we offer hair blowouts and makeup services in your home or your office. So if you open the door at home and you're welcoming in the two-person Glam Squad, I promise you when those two people leave your home, you're going to feel so much better about yourself than you did before you opened the door.
Before they got there.
And in order for our clients to work with us, they really have to trust our brand, and they trust that we are finding the best stylists and makeup artists to send to them. And so a lot of the reasons our customers are booking appointments with us could be for really important occasions in their life. It could be a wedding, it could be a birthday, it could be a job interview, could be a moment like this where you're going to be on camera and you need to feel great and camera ready. So our customers put a lot of trust in us, and so we need to do everything on our end to make sure that trust lasts.
Right, and that almost circles back to what we had talked about earlier, that at Gilt had built such a I'll say cult type following, and I've seen that word used. It might have been Bladen out there. A few folks had kind of talked about building kind of that cult-like following. How hard is it to maintain? That's a high level. I mean, when people just say, and again, not I've heard of Gilt. No, I love Gilt. How do you that's a hard level to maintain, that high level to any customer. How did you all do it? How can others do that?
Sure. So the story for us at Gilt was we were creating a business for which we were the target customer. So Alexis and I were creating a shopping experience that we wanted to shop. We wanted high-end brands, we wanted them for great prices, and we wanted some fun and convenience in shopping. We didn't necessarily realize how competitive the shopping process would become, but that was, I guess that's been part of the secret sauce and part of what has made our customers the Gilt customers log into a Gilt sale as close to noon as possible, because they know if they wait around, they might miss out on that amazing dress in their size.
And they only have themselves to blame. I know that was something that I read in the book, that it's on them because they didn't show up in time. And so you build this sense of urgency. But to maintain that, how is that maintained? Is that just something that was organic and unique to the Gilt experience? Is there a way to replicate that for other companies?
I think for small business owners, you really need to understand your customer. Why is he or she shopping your business? And obviously not every business is going to be a consumer-facing company,
right.
But you need to understand that mentality, and you need to keep them coming, and you can't get stale. You have to innovate. You have to be offering them newness and innovation, and whether that's through the product assortments that you're offering, whether that's through technology, partnerships, PR can be really exciting. So doing some sort of unexpected surprise once in a while. Sometimes it could be a freebie or a giveaway. It really depends on what the business is. But if you are always offering the same status quo experience to your customers, they're not going to be necessarily talking about it all the time and obsessed about it. If you look at a company like Uber, which is a very exciting company in many respects, they're constantly innovating and adding new bells and whistles to their product and to their system, and they're very clever about marketing partnerships.
Yeah, the new service level offerings. They've done a lot of different partnerships where you've seen that Uber badge show up on all sorts of websites there where it hadn't been. I want to get to a couple questions that have come in here from a few folks. And Steve, thanks for being out here with us. And folks, you can get questions in at any time for the remainder that we have here. I've seen a lot coming through here. Steve, and I saw a few others were talking about and asking, how do you know that now this thing that I think I'm passionate about, I can really take and turn into a business, and understanding that it's not, that there really is maybe a passion or a calling. Do you have, again, maybe a checklist of the folks that you've been mentoring and working with? How have you been able to really notice, yeah, she's got really the passion to make that work, not just kind of likes the idea?
Well, every case is different, so I think you're not going to necessarily launch an amazing, big, successful business just on passion. There need to be a bunch of different factors coming together. So one, you take the idea. The idea is important, but an idea can always be refined. I really put a lot of importance on the people behind, or the person, but really it's hard for one person to do anything alone, so it's really, whether you call them co-founders or it's the early team, but it's those that are going to take this idea off the ground and really execute. And something Alexis and I talk about a lot and mention in our book is it's all in the execution. The devil's in the details, and if you don't get that right, it's going to be very hard to build a big business. One
detail, you have the first sale at Gilt. It's in 2007, and if I have the numbers right, it was 9 a.m., but that was New York time. I was sleeping. It was 6 o'clock on the West Coast. You all immediately made a conscious decision. We've got to push it back. You went 2 hours back, and now it's at noon Eastern, so you hit breakfast and lunch. But that was one of those details that you're not going to always get those right in the beginning, but you have to be flexible to make those changes and continue to evolve the execution, right?
Absolutely. I think you have to react to data and facts, and you don't have to put your stake in the sand every time. You can make adjustments. And so part of what we learned immediately from that very first sale that we did back in 2007 with Gilt was, we thought that we were creating an online sample sale environment. And so many times in New York City, when you have a sample sale for a brand, there's a line, but that line is fairly consistent throughout the day. And we thought that the traffic would come to our site throughout the day. It was going to be a 36-hour sale, so we thought some people might log in at 9, some people might log in at their lunch break at the end of the day. And what we found from day one, and this has continued 7 years later, is that the excitement and the traffic rush in right at the beginning. And so that was something we learned. So what was funny is that some of our first purchasers for the 9 a.m. Eastern sale that we did were actually West Coast people. So we thought, oh my gosh, they're waking up at 6 a.m. to shop on our site. That's really mean. So we have to make it later. So I think being really reactive, listening to your customers, coming up with ways so that your customers can interact and talk to you, whether that's through social media, whether that's through customer service, just giving them a channel so that you can listen to their voice is really, really important.
And let's talk about customers together. There was another question that came in our queue, and it was about attracting those customers. Now, Gilt, you had a great, and there's a great story, folks. We don't have to go deep into it, but Alexandra had her, I did it. I knew I was going to do this. When you read in the book, you're going to see that people always confuse Alexis and Alexandra, and they'll respond to either one. So if I call her Alexis the rest of the interview, it would be all right. But you had a BlackBerry and lost like 9,000 contacts. It got mostly restored, and so you can read the story in the book, folks. But you did a lot of word of mouth, and you had a great network. That was one of your strengths coming to the group originally, is you had the connections, you had made those in the fashion industry. For folks, I think it was Stephanie, that they don't have a huge network. They have the passion, they have the dedication, they have the idea, they don't have that network, and they don't have money to advertise. What are ways that folks like that can get customers? You had 13,000 that first sale day that at least you had sent out to and invited. So talk a little bit about that. How can we get customers in when we don't know a lot of people, we can't budget for it?
Well, I think in today's day and age, it's really fortunate that social media exists because for the most part, social media is a tool that can be free. So if you know you're launching a business and you know that you want an audience that, let's say, is really interested in beauty, for example, before you launch, you can try to start building some sort of following, interacting with other beauty businesses online through, let's say, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever channel is relevant to you, Pinterest, if it's kind of photography intent, so that when you're ready to launch, you already have a little bit of a following. That's going to be really helpful. Reaching out to bloggers that are relevant to what your business
industry,
is.
yeah.
I think, and so many bloggers are tied to industry, so that's something to think about. And, if you're not a people person and you are somewhat introverted and you don't have a network and maybe you're not based in a big city, then think about who can I find out there, whether it's someone in my network or who went to a school that I went to or who's a friend of a friend of a friend. I mean, LinkedIn is one of my favorite tools. I use LinkedIn all the time. As big as my network is, I don't know everybody, and there's so many companies that I want to speak with, individuals that I want to speak with that aren't part of my network. So I always go to LinkedIn and I'll say, I want to find someone who works at X company because maybe we can do some sort of cool partnership together. And then you can see very easily who do you know that might know that person so that you can get there. And I'm a big fan of cold calling. I really have thick skin. If someone doesn't write me back, I don't take it personally. And if they do write me back, I get excited and I'm like, great, let's turn that email chain into a phone call, or ideally even into a meeting face to face.
Right. It sounds like, again, it goes back to balance. If someone is maybe not that outgoing type, then you find a partner that can come on and be part of that. So many social media options now. Folks that you've worked with that are starting off, do you focus on one or two? Do you try and hit every single, the 6 or 7 major social media platforms, focus in on one or two and get good there? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends on the business.
Yeah.
So it probably depends on what the target age of the customer that you're trying to reach is. So if you're trying to go after teenagers, the channels that they're using are going to be different than baby boomers. So it really, you really have to understand who your customer is, where does she kind of live online? What are they reading? What newspapers are they reading? What blogs? What other stores are they going to? And the better you know your current customer, the smarter you're going to be about making business decisions and partnership decisions.
And it sounds like, also to a comment you made earlier, keep letting them in. Do your research, find out who they are, know what you can about them, but also know that they're going to be evolving because, and I can only imagine, even with Guilt, right? That started 7 years ago. I'm sure you have folks and customers that are still buying today that they did 7 years ago, but a lot changes for someone in 7 years. Children, marriage, different levels of business. And so the business has to be open to hearing, what are my customers going through? What changes are they having? What societal changes are happening that we need to be a part of too? That's a lot of listening through social media as well.
Listening and certainly collecting data and getting, not only, first you have to get good at collecting data, and then step 2 is really interpreting that data and understanding it and using the data to help you make business decisions. Something Alexis and I did at Guilt and something we're now doing at Glam Squad is trying to reach out to some of our really engaged customers. And so Alexis and I, when we would travel the country and sometimes the world for work, whatever that might be, maybe we had an event to go to in Miami, we would look up who are our top clients in the South Florida area, and we would invite them for a coffee or for breakfast or just stop in and say hello. And they were really excited to meet us.
Yeah.
And they were really excited to, what was funny is they actually didn't want to talk fashion at all. They wanted to understand how we built this business.
Yeah.
And even if they had no entrepreneurial interest, they were just so fascinated and curious. That's actually why we ended up writing our book, because we just found that a lot of people wanted to understand our story. But in Glam Squad, the same thing. As I've been getting up to speed and understanding customer behavior, there are a lot of customers who book their blowouts early in the morning, and it's because they have big careers. Maybe they're a real estate agent or a CEO, or just have kind of a big big job.
And a need, yeah.
And then a lot of women are booking their appointments for Saturday nights to go out. Maybe it's on a date or to parties or events. Weddings are a big opportunity and channel for us. So just spending time with our customers and listening to them is something we do, and I definitely recommend to all small business owners.
You might have clients in my household if you get out to the San Francisco area with Glam Squad, because seeing my wife trying to get ready for a date with the 3 kids hanging on her,
it's really
it takes forever.
hard.
She's with me on here in New York, and she got ready in 15 minutes the other night, but that's a 45-minute deal with the kids around.
Exactly.
So there's also that crowd. Glam Squad, I mean, cool name. Guilt is a good name. I know, again, in the book there's a story about the coming up with the name. I've seen some really cool names throughout the 10 or 15 years here that I've been talking with folks. I've seen some really bad names. Does a name make or break a company? If Guilt had been something else, if Glam Squad was something else, are they different businesses?
I think names are really, really important, whether it be for a company or for a person. I think a name, and especially if it's a consumer-facing business, the name and the brand and the logo and the spelling and the font, all of that is really, really important. So if you're thinking about a name, I would suggest to a small business owner or an entrepreneur thinking about taking that plunge. Get feedback from people. Get feedback from your would-be customers, some who are friends and maybe some people who you don't know as well. And you can use tools like SurveyMonkey to take a free poll. Wikipedia is actually a resource we used quite a bit. Alexis typed in a number of different words into Wikipedia when we were trying to come up for the name of Guilt. She typed in words like elegant and timeless and luxury, and we had a list of 5 of our favorite names, and then we did a survey, and it was very clear to everyone that Guilt was the winner. And something we thought very carefully about in naming Guilt was, if Guilt was successful with women, we did want to go after men in the future, and so we didn't want to pick a name that was too feminine. There are a lot of brands out there that do start focused on one gender, and then when they introduce the other gender, they tweak the name so that it does make sense. And then some companies want one name that kind of is gender neutral. So it doesn't really matter, I think, in terms of the gender approach, but you just have to be really, really conscious of it. And then, of course, the URL has to be available.
Yes, that's always, and short, all right? Shorter is sweeter. It's something that we do remember, and Guilt is very easy. I believe it was Karen had a question here. So Karen, thanks for being here. Folks can continue to get questions into us, but was asking, at any point in growing either Guilt here at Glam Squad, was there ever some obstacle that came up that you just almost thought, I might have to give this up. This just isn't worth the risk or anything like that. Has anything like that come up in your entrepreneurial growth?
I'm pausing because I'm thinking, but honestly, no. And I think part of that has to do with my personality and the personalities of my co-founders, both for Guilt and for Glam Squad. But I am a fighter. I am not a quitter. I am resilient, and not every aspect of every single thing we've launched at Guilt, or that we probably will launch at Glam Squad, will be as successful as not every business or vertical will be equally successful, but you figure it out, you persevere, you make adjustments, you tweak, you listen, you look at the data, and you keep fighting. And sometimes I say, startup, on the one hand, there's nothing like a startup. I mean, you have the highest highs. It's like a roller coaster. Highest high is the best adrenaline rush you're ever going to get from anything. But it's very personal, whether you're a founder or an early team member. It doesn't matter. If you're part of that blood, sweat, and tears stage of a business, you're going to hit lows, and you take them personally. And it's not like a more corporate environment where, Friday, 5 p.m., you walk out the door and you put your iPhone or PDA away and don't pull it out again until Monday morning. When it's a startup, you are always connected. You are always living and breathing in it. And that's not for everyone. No,
it's not. And that takes, and one of the things within the book, which I think is it's not only a good read, but it's a good resource book, because there are all these little checklists in there, and they help. Some were personal that helped you make decisions whether or not to leave a job that you had. It was paying the bills. It was taking care of you. You were kind of bored, and you went through a checklist of kind of your pros and cons, and it turned out that no, this was the absolutely right thing for you. And I guess that goes for a lot of entrepreneurs, and maybe you can talk about this a little bit, really knowing one's self, right? There's a journey working with other people, and there's the journey of the technical journey of a company. But do you really need to know who you are to make that company successful?
You know, I'm learning with time why people become startup junkies, and especially where you're coming from, and San Francisco and the Bay Area, people might be on their second, third, fourth, fifth startup. I think because once you've experienced that, it's very hard to go back to a much more structured corporate and even political environment. But yeah, I think you have to be, I think it's okay to be a little bit naive in a startup. I think that's actually a good thing.
Why?
Why? Because for a lot of entrepreneurs, if they knew how hard it was really going to be, they might have chickened out.
Yeah.
And it is hard. And you know, for all of you out there who are in startups and living and breathing it every single day, you're doing hand-to-hand combat many days. And you know, for anyone to get up there and be like, oh, startups, easy peasy, Facebook, oh, you know, hugely successful company. I mean, it is hard work, and you take it really personally, and there are going to be moments where it feels like nothing is going right. But if you are committed and passionate and you believe in what you're building, you're going to get through all of those hard moments.
Good stuff there. Amma is with us. So Amma, thank you for being on board for the event here today. One of the questions that came in was about expanding. And Gilt started off with women's fashion. You sold cars recently. There's travel. It really has expanded. What was it like, and for people like Amma that are on the verge of, well, we've been doing okay so far, maybe they've been doing good regionally, but they've decided we want to break out of that regional area, maybe go statewide, or maybe outside of the state we want to go to the Pacific Northwest and conquer that area. How do you know? What are ways to gauge when it's the right time to move forward and expand and grow again? So
my first gut instinct in answer to your question is test. Because you're never going to know if something is going to be successful until you test it out. So before you throw all your eggs in one basket and say, you know, we're going for this, which might be very different from what you've been doing up until now, test it out. Maybe do beta testing. A/B testing is great. If you're thinking about introducing a new product line, a new vertical, whatever it might be, depends on the person's business. Get feedback. Listen to your customers. Ask your customers what do they want. Ask your brand partners and the different partners you work with, you know, what they think would be feasible. Because it's really hard to know what's going to take off and be successful until you actually test it out.
Sometimes, and you've experienced this, people say, but that ain't gonna work. It's not gonna happen. You had that happen, but you pushed through. You just knew, you just believed, you what that helps you get past that type of fear. Because I know there are people out here that have pitched ideas, maybe to friends, maybe to family, maybe just to investors, and they said no. And they might wanna turn tail and run. You didn't, why not?
Well, it's really hard to hear anything that feels like rejection.
Yeah.
And so you have to have thick skin. But one thing we mention in our book is listen to the naysayers. And I really believe that. It's as painful as it might be to hear people criticize your business. It's good for you to understand what is it that they're criticizing. Is there something that I'm thinking about doing that's really wrong and going to fall apart, and this is someone with expertise who can help me understand that? Or am I just not articulating my vision clearly?
Okay.
And I think a lot of times that could be the case. Or for a lot of entrepreneurs, the whole game plan and the vision is up here, and sometimes it's hard to get it from your head on paper so that you can easily communicate it to someone else. So listen to that negative feedback, see if there's any way that negative feedback can help you refine what you're working on. And you know, you never know where that criticism could be coming from. It could be jealousy. It could be people just
having a bad day. And
having
you
a
just
bad
happen
day,
to tell them
yeah.
at the wrong time, and they don't like anything.
And look, there are many amazing, hugely successful businesses out there that didn't exist, 5 years ago. That I remember when they started out. I was thinking to myself, yeah, I would never shop that way. I would never use that. It doesn't matter if I'm. And it's true. I haven't used a lot of those businesses necessarily, but that doesn't mean they're not going to become hugely successful. Right. Not every person is going to be a consumer to every consumer-facing business.
Absolutely. Paula had a question, and I liked this. Did you have a backup plan in case Gilt didn't work? And part of me here's the question, looks at it, I'm like, I don't know, that would give me an out, right? If I know I have an out, I might not personally be able to drive all the way towards that goal because I know there's something there. Did you have an out? Did you have a backup plan, or were you just fully committed? And is that something entrepreneurs need to do, fully commit?
I was definitely fully committed, and I think entrepreneurs have to be fully committed, but you also have to have a sense of reality. If you have mouths to feed and bills to pay, maybe in your mind you have a time frame of I can only go so long before I need to change my course. So a lot of entrepreneurs aren't getting a salary for a long period of time until you have raised funds. And so for some people it might be like, okay, I'm going to give it my best, and I'm going to give it maybe 2 years. And if we can't get funding within 2 years, then I have to come up with another strategy. But I think every situation, every company, every person is going to approach it differently. I mean, for me, and we outlined this in the book, how I was evaluating, is this a risk worth taking? I sat down with my father, who's actually a mentor, has always been a mentor for me. And I got feedback from my husband too, but he was much more supportive. Like, if you want to do this and you believe in it, go for it. And my dad kind of helped me map it out a little of like, what could the upside look like? What could the downside look like? What's the worst case scenario that happens? And maybe that's you don't get funding, the business doesn't take off, and you need to go out there and look for a new job. Like, are you okay with that? How bad is that really? And I realized I'm okay with that. In the case of Gilt. So I think you need to just be really honest with yourself. Most startups fail. You got to know that. Founders can get fired. Startups fail. A lot of bad things happen. Founders can part ways. I mean, these are bitter realities that you need to be aware of. And I think if you kind of go in with eyes wide open, then the realities will be a lot easier to handle later.
You brought up funding. Anthony is with us. Crowdfunding, right? The Kickstarters of the world, that is a newer phenomenon. Was not available, if I recall, back to 2007. There wasn't a whole lot of that going on. Is that something that you're knowledgeable about? Is that a trendy way that may or may not last? Going the investment banker route, going friends and family, just hard-earned cash out of the pocket to bootstrap a company? It's probably another depends, but what are you saying? What's a trend, I guess, you're seeing for a lot of startups these days? Where are they looking for their funding?
Yeah, I think that, of course, it depends. It depends on where you're coming from, how big your network is. For some people, they might have a network of angels that they can easily go to help invest and get the business going. For most people, they probably don't have that network. So I think crowdfunding is an amazing resource. And also, if you're creating some sort of consumer product, you can tie, let's say you're creating a t-shirt company, you can tie that into the crowdfunding and, put in this much money and here's what you get in return. And people love to help the underdog. They love to experience product and get product. And I think that's been a really clever way for businesses to get traction. And then once they have some traction, then they can maybe go out and raise some institutional funding.
Yeah. I had mentioned earlier that, and you just brought up your father was one of your mentors. You, in turn, are mentoring others, and that's something that I've read is a passion of yours now, is kind of giving back. Is that, why is that? What drove that to go from leading the successful growth of Gilt to now giving back and mentoring others and being a part of their network and someone that can help guide them?
Yeah, well, I think I've been very lucky to have received advice from some awesome mentors, both male and female, over the years. And so I do think it's this ecosystem of you give and you get. And I do believe that mentorship is a two-way street. There are a lot of earlier stage entrepreneurs who are building something, and I can learn from them. They're approaching their business differently. Maybe they're 10 years younger than I am, and so their friends are using mobile apps differently from how my friends are using them. I mean, I think that we can all learn from one another, and if I can share some of the experiences and pain points I've discovered along the way and make it easier for the next startup coming around, that why wouldn't I do that? And I've learned a lot from others.
And to that point, it also sounds like comments that we've had before. Again, our previous live Q&A session, Mario Armstrong was talking about just putting yourself out there, right? And being around people. And sometimes we have this idea that you are in a startup and you're so head down into building that business that you forget about the rest of the world for a while. Is there a danger in that? Do you need to continue to put yourself out there and be around other people just for what you said, to gain those experiences, to see those different perspectives, get a breath of fresh air every now and again?
I think it probably depends on the person, depends on the company, depends where you're located. But for me, I am always out there. I think it is really important. I think it's been part of the success of the companies that I've worked with as an entrepreneur, is bringing in partnerships and business deals and new opportunities. And if I were just sitting at my desk and with headphones kind of jamming on my computer all day, none of those partnerships or opportunities would be possible. So it really depends on the functional role that the person has and the type of business. But Gilt was all about bringing in the coolest, most desirable fashion brands, home brands, kids brands, etc. So we had to go out there, find them, and convince them to partner with us. Mm-hmm. Glam Squad is about providing beauty services and making our clients, just feel great about themselves. And so we have to go out there, we have to get the clients, convince them to download our app and test the service. And we also have so many partners to work with. So it depends, but I like being out there. I like being in roles that are externally facing. Mm-hmm. I like meeting new people and thinking, here's what's going on in your head for your business. Here's where we are. How can we do something that's mutually beneficial?
Gotcha. The growth of Gilt, do you have a list, maybe the top 2 things that you sometimes sit back and remember that, hey, these are the 2 biggest kind of business and or life lessons that I learned going through that whole process, from making the choice to join as an early co-founder, to going through that first sale, to then launching in Japan and launching the other brands that are affiliated with Gilt. Do you have that little top list of these are the things that I've learned that I'm always going to carry with me?
Well, I think one key lesson that I learned through the Gilt experience and that I'm applying today to Glam Squad is to just always be as innovative as possible and just build and scale and grow and think big. And while you're thinking big, you can't lose sight of the day-to-day, because it's really easy to either just be in the minutia of the day-to-day or just think big. But if you can do that in tandem, you're going to come up with something that is really special, and you'll provide your clients with an amazing experience.
Is there anything that you did at Gilt that you're not doing at Glam Squad? Whether it's a way of working with employees or marketing, or is there anything that you really, hey, that just did not work for us, we're not going to repeat that again, we're going to do something new, different, innovative in that manner? Well,
they're 2 totally different businesses, but one thing that was really key to getting Gilt launched and off the ground was this by invitation only concept. Glam Squad is not by invitation only. Mm-hmm. We invite anyone to download our app, and so building that hype around you've been invited is different. And so we're kind of working through how do we still make people feel special at Glam Squad by discovering our app and our services without quote unquote inviting them to something that they otherwise don't have access to. So that feeling of access was very special in the early days of Gilt, and so we're just trying to think through at Glam Squad, what is it that applies to our business? And we're a mobile app. That is what we do at Glam Squad. So It's a little bit different than when we launched Guilt back in 2007. Today, of course, Guilt has many awesome apps, but back then it was all web-based.
Want to go back to relationships, and Sarah has been with us since the beginning. Employees at Glam Squad, you have two groups that you have to be looking out for. You have that customer at home that you want to make sure they have the greatest experience possible. You also have then the hairstylists, the makeup artists that are going out as well. And you want to make sure they're having a good experience. How are you evaluating, and what type of criteria are you able to apply towards the artists that come in here, the makeup artists and the hairstylists, to know if they're a good match for the people they're going out to? That sounds to Sarah like that's difficult, and it's the idea of really vetting out employees and folks that you're working with. How do you go about that?
We want everyone to embrace the Glam Squad brand, and that's something that I'm really, really passionate about. And so what I'm spending a lot of my time thinking through, something I deem to be really important to the success of Glam Squad, is thinking about that brand. And I want our clients to feel good about the brand, and I want our makeup artists and hairstylists to feel really proud to be a part of what we internally call Glam Fam. And I think, there's so many studies out there about why people stay loyal working for a brand, and usually compensation isn't the number one reason. And I think that's always a surprise when you kind of look at what it is that is most important. But things that we really pride ourselves on is, our makeup artists, our stylists, they're creative people, they're talented, and they take pride in their work, and so they feel really good about making our clients feel good. And so when they get that positive recognition from our clients, we send out surveys, and when they get a survey result that is incredibly positive, that makes them feel good about their work, about being a part of Glam Squad. And then our clients, of course, feel fantastic because they look great for whatever it is they're going to.
Well, it goes back to an earlier idea that we started the hour with, and we're almost done, so I do have a final question here. But it goes back to that idea of giving employees some of that ownership and the right to go out there and be the brand ambassadors and be involved, and not just have to do what someone said, but have some ownership and be able to share then with you, back up the ladder and say, well, this is an idea I had. I was just out. I experienced this. Maybe we could make a change. And then again, we go through a lot of the things we talked about today, vetting the changes. So it's giving that trust to those employees as well.
Absolutely.
All right. One of the last questions I think we'll get here, and this is kind of those 3 tips, right, that you would be able to share to a small business owner. And we've got folks at multiple stages. We have people that they're not started that business yet. They're just thinking, I want to do something. They're not happy where they're at. We've got people that are already launched. We've got people in the planning stages. 3 of your just kind of best ideas, best tips that you can leave them with, that they can kind of go and start applying as they move forward.
So first and foremost, I would say, think about, is this a business that you can truly be passionate about? Because most startups are for the long haul. It's not a 2-year, 1-year type of investment of time. Think of it as a marriage. You're married to this startup potentially for the rest of your career. A lot of startups are forever. So think about your passion. Okay. Number 2 is think about the team that you're going to build, whether you call them co-founders, your early employees. No one person can do it alone. So think about that. It's going to be absolutely critical to the success of the business. And then the 3rd tip would be to think about your network and to just always build that network. I believe strongly that the person is going to do as well as those around the person want the person to do. So, find people who are going to be there on the sidelines, rooting for you, helping you along the way, and that's gonna really propel the business to success. And the last thing I'll say, I know I already gave 3, is if you don't ask, you don't get. Don't be shy to ask people for favors, and I think women sometimes have an even harder time just asking for favors. If you don't ask, you don't get. You never know.
All right, hey, it's a great place to wrap up. Really appreciate Alexandra Wilkis Wilson being with us here today. Appreciate all of you joining us for this live Q&A session from the Business Circle, again brought to you by AT&T. October the 20th, that is our next event that is scheduled. Ramon Ray is with us. He's going to be discussing how to really build your business. We're going to have more information, registration details, all that at bizcircle.att.com. There are other past interviews. You can find the archives there as well, and all sorts of other resources. So I encourage you to stay in touch again with the Business Circle. It's bizcircle.att.com. On behalf of Alexandra and the Business Circle, again, my name is James Hilliard, and we do look forward to talking to you all down the road.